Hello, all. Welcome to another edition of The Real News Today. As I've stated previously, the main goal of these segments is just to really dissect some of the things that are in the news. I know there can be a lot of confusion, and I also really want people to feel more empowered with the health of their body. So, as I've stated in the past, I do research these significantly, but I am open to feedback. So if there's something that I say or an article that you're aware of, feel free to send it to me. But again, keep in mind, I'd ask for research-based thoughts only, not personal opinion. So a few topics for today. We're going to talk about a word that I never thought I would talk about, which is the term fake news, the chiropractic principle, vitamin D. Can you get coronavirus from inanimate object transmission? Some thoughts on the state of Iowa and the country of Sweden, and finishing with an invite to our Masterclass, which is a 6-part series that will give you every bit of information you need to lead a healthy life, in my opinion. So first of all, the topic of fake news. When I heard that term, give or take 4 years ago, I thought it was, quite frankly, the dumbest thing. I never gave it a second thought. I don't personally watch the news on TV. I try and read very little news articles. I try and read more research-based articles. And then that really all changed, at least my thinking of it, in January of 2018. My wife and I went with several couples to Napa Valley. And when we went there, it was during the time that there were wildfires all over California, very similar to what's going on now. And while I can't speak to the wildfires currently, although I know they are devastating in many areas, what I can tell you is I had no less than 10 people contact us and tell us they didn't think it was a good idea for us to go to Napa because of the wildfires. Now, we went out there. I expected to see devastation and all this burning. I'd seen pictures even in the airport of the news literally the day we were flying out of these horrible fires in Napa Valley. And when we got there and we went to the first location, I said, well, what's going on? I saw there's fires everywhere, yet nobody seems stressed out here. Like, what's the deal? And what they said is at the time that we went was literally the tail end of the wildfires at that time. And what the big media companies, Fox and CNN and CBS and these huge companies that do the news nationally, what they were doing is they were often more than 20 miles away filming buildings burning and wineries burning and vineyards burning, and then they were labeling it Napa Valley wineries burning, when in reality at the time that we were out there, only 4 acres had burned and only 1 winery. And still that's too many, but it wasn't the devastation. It was 1 out of 600 plus, and yet it was okay. It wasn't illegal for the news to completely fabricate or lie about the news. Now, you can believe anything you want about the current numbers, but there is unfortunately, high chance that some of these are inflated with underlying media outcomes. So that's just a quick thought on fake news. Now, more than that, when I am driving, or when I see certain people in places, I see people that completely avoid the gym. They wear masks and gloves and all this stuff. And again, I believe very much in personal choice. But one thing that is different from the chiropractic principle versus I would call conventional principle is that we believe, or I personally believe, in the term above, down, inside out, meaning that your brain and your neurology and your immune system, the stronger that your body is on the inside, the more it protects you from the outside. And one of the beautiful things about that is it just flat out doesn't have the side effects of this other stuff. Last week we talked about the upcoming vaccine. This week we're talking, or this time I would just ask you to think about or read about hand sanitizer. If you chronically kill bacteria, you're going to create superbugs. It's just how it works. The more antibiotics and the more sanitizer that gets used, the more superbugs emerge. One of those that is very deadly is called C. diff, or that's the short version for it. It hospitalizes and kills hundreds, if not thousands, of people a year, and it actually is resistant to hand sanitizer. So the more hand sanitizer you put on your skin, the more likely you are to transmit C. diff, so you can share it with other people. You may even infect someone with a compromised immune system by a healthy person using an outside-in treatment when they're already healthy or strong enough. The thing that they are showing, and that really a lot of people don't want to think about, is that healthy people are lower transmitters. Although we're all equals, I say frequently, like, we're all equals in Christ. We're all made in the love and image. But the reality is that there's different levels of health. There's different levels of investment in health. Some people got up and worked out this morning. Some people didn't. Some people slept in. Some people ate a healthy breakfast. Some people had a donut. Some people get adjusted. Some people don't. It's just the reality that certain people invest in their health and some people sacrifice their health. And while I do think it's important to protect the immunocompromised, keep in mind that healthy people are going to be the savior or the answer to this. But among that, now vitamin D. So a great release was vitamin D this week. It was actually Dr. Fauci and the National Institute of Health talked about people with higher vitamin D levels transmit or have lower symptoms of coronavirus. Now, what's interesting to me is that many of those studies, in fact, 8 were published on the government's research website as early as April. So there were 8 studies that showed vitamin D usage could be utilized or an effective help as early as April. So one of the things that I think is so important is, what are you consuming, or are you getting outside to get that natural vitamin D? Because that's one of those that's been researched very heavily. I read an article yesterday, and in that article, it talked about taking as much as 4,000. I know that certain natural news outlets like Dr. Mercola, they actually recommend 7,000 if you're deficient. And what does deficient mean? There's an interesting thing as well, because that same National Institute of Health actually lowered vitamin D recommendations. They lowered it from 30 to 100 to 20 to 50. So depending on which recommendation your doctor follows, they may or may not have all the health benefits. So most studies that we've shown in the past on some of our videos or on our PowerPoints, if you've been to our classes, most of those show that when you get to that number 50 is when you start to see benefits such as lower cancer rates, lower heart disease rates, lower MS rates, even lower expression of the genetic condition type 1 diabetes. So having that high number in your body is really a sign of a healthier person. And how do you get that? You can get that for free by getting outside, but you can also supplement with healthy food supplements, or you can get it from things like mushrooms or fatty fish. But again, from an outside-in philosophy, a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D, not only because of all the inside, whether it's school or work or some of these different things, but additionally because of sunscreen. So it is important to wear sunscreen if you're at risk for severe burns, but also it's important to get out there and get sunlight. So people that take on sunscreen, or they put it on before they even leave the house and that sort of thing, there are multiple studies that show that sunscreen itself may cause more skin cancer than the sun. So why is that? It looks at an outside-in versus an inside-out perspective. I personally feel that a little bit of sun is going to help you with the vitamin D consumption and therefore lead a healthier life. Now, the next thing, inanimate object transmission. So you can just type this in on Google and see and read about it. But the Lancet, which is the United Kingdom's version of the New England Journal of Medicine, posted a review of all studies up through June that showed that while depending on the medium, coronavirus can sit on an inanimate object for multiple days. Every one of those studies they had an unnatural preservative on them to keep it wet or to keep it, allow it to stay alive. The only study that they could find at that time where they actually had someone cough or sneeze onto an inanimate object actually found that they couldn't detect coronavirus on it. And so the transmission by simply touching something is very, very unlikely. So keep that in mind. I know people who were, afraid to get their mail, or they cleaned off their groceries, or they wore gloves. And it's fine to do that, but also when you do that, you're following a study that you may not really know all the background into. So like I said, the summary of the research that I can find is, and again, type in the Lancet on Google, shows that inanimate object transmission is incredibly rare. So while we will continue to wipe down the tables between every treatment, we will continue to sanitize and clean and do all those things, that fear of that, really, it should empower you to feel like it's a really low likelihood. Now, if you talk about certain countries, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but there are certain places that if you look at effectiveness, Sweden has been the country that has been most talked about, probably most pressured. We mentioned it last time for those of you that are in the office, but ultimately only wearing, masks and being able to social distance in certain spots hasn't led to a massive overflow of cases or deaths. Now, it did early on while they were developing herd immunity, but it hasn't since. In fact, now their numbers mirror more like the US's. You can go just west of here to the state of Iowa and you can go into a store or a restaurant where both the patrons and the staff members often aren't wearing masks or gloves. And so, the reason I bring that up is, 6-7 months into this pandemic, if masks and gloves were what were, really lowering the spread, wouldn't those states, this is a question, wouldn't those states just have massive overflows compared to those that do, or that shut down certain places? So look that up, do your own research, but I wouldn't watch the news. I would really look up articles. I'd strongly encourage you to do so, and I know many of you do. Lastly, depending on what time you watch this, I'm recording this on September 29th. Depending on when you watch this, we are going to come out with a 6 seminar masterclass. And what it is it's going to have different topics ranging from strengthening your immunity to natural ways to prevent cancer, to losing weight, to different things that really should help you to feel empowered. And they're going to be published. And for those people that do choose to watch and participate in all 6, at the end, we are going to have prizes, drawings. We're going to do dinner giveaways. We're going to do some things to just really appreciate the people who are really actively learning or working to learn to be better. I'll leave you with this, and you can look this up on Peak Sports Club out of Rockford. They published this study, or they published an article about this yesterday or the day before. But they also talked about how, although gyms have been closed and then now opened, that they don't think that people are really transmitting or significantly increasing the number of cases or deaths for those people that go to the gym. In fact, they're pointing at possibly they're helping to lower it because they're fighting the main risk factors like obesity, weak lungs, different a weak immune system. And so if you want to read that, I know Peak Sports Club published that, and so you can look that up on Facebook. But appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day.